the thing with testosterone is it's so easy to sell because you just tell people like, do you feel tired at the end of the day? Like, do you ever not want to go to the gym?
You just say yes. Yeah.
Yeah. And everybody's like, oh, me, I need testosterone. That's why I'm not motivated to go to the gym at 5 a.m. Like, no, like, so it's really easy as a company to sell it to you.
Vigorous Steve here with Vigorous Podcast. Today, I'm joined with Dr. Adam Hotchkiss. We're going to do a two-parter. Part one is going to be on this YouTube channel. If you want to see part two, that's over at the Atlas Hour on Dr. Adam Hotchkiss' personal YouTube channel. I'll link it down below. So if you want to know more after watching this first hour, please head over, subscribe there. There's a ton more great podcasts with Stan Efferding, a couple other people, so you can learn more there. And I wanted to get you on because you've been making the rounds of podcasts. You've been everywhere recently. And I really like what you put out. So you've been on Fuan Abiat's Elite FTS. You were on Mark Bell's Power Project podcast, right? Tell us a little bit about yourself. Yeah, tell us a little bit about yourself for the people who don't know who you are yet.
Yeah, man. So I am right now. I'm a provider or a partner provider over at Marek Health. That's how I kind of got into this space. At least making the rounds on podcasts was through Marek because they've got a pretty good social, presence. Previous to that, though, I'm actually a foot and ankle surgeon. So by training, I trained in podiatry and then specialized in rear foot reconstructive surgery. And that's kind of my medical background. But all through that, through undergrad, medical training, residency, everything, I was just a bro at heart and doing a lot of self-experimentation. Right. A lot of your stories and my stories, when I listen to you, I resonate. I'm like, yeah, I've done that too. I've done that. Like, oh yeah, I did that stupid experiment myself. So I was always in this space learning a lot. And in school, just because when you specialize in a certain area of the body, like foot and ankle, I still learned all the basic biochemistry and physiology, and I need to know all the pharmacology. And so I had that background, and then I was able to use what I think is more important, my own experience, to kind of meld those two together and come up with, safer use models and just kind of the experience and the knowledge melded together in one. And Derek reached out to me, asked me to come on to Marek. And in the beginning, I was like, well, I'm not really trained in this. And that's not what they were looking for. They weren't looking for somebody who's just trained in endocrinology, who's going to give you a once a week injection of, 100 milligrams and send you on your way with anastrozole or something. Like we're trying to build something new here where we have people like yourself who are actually experienced in this, who know, what's going on. And so I came on to Marek, and it's just been amazing. About 10% of my time is now in the OR. It's very, very minimal. I do almost all of this exclusively. It's truly my passion. It's been a blast, man.
It's good to help people in our similar space, right? If you have an interest in that and your background is like that, of course, but I believe you have surgery in a couple hours. Yeah. So you're still, still in demand that sense. But yeah, I love helping people, with TRT in their entire journey just to get into a better state of health, and whether that's with PEDs or without it. That's why I like Marek Health so much, because you guys don't just do cookie cutter TRT stuff, right? You actually help people with health and so many other things, just to make sure everybody gets set up right, and then they can really improve their quality of life. So I said, did you see that story of Bobby on Marek Health? Yeah. So he's one of my referrals. It must have been over 2 years ago, and then. Through Marek Health, we found out that he had severe issues with his heart, even though the background was that he was eating, processed carbohydrates in Greece, and he didn't really have an issue. And then he came back to America, and his inflammatory markers went sky high. And that was around the time I referred him to Marek Health. And then Dorian Belli really realized, like, oh, this can't be good. It was before I saw the blood work results. So they put him through the ringer, and then we're basically able to save his life, because if that would have continued for a couple more months, he probably punched his card.
Yeah.
So these kinds of success stories
like that.
Yeah. A lot of success stories. And now he's in a perfect state of health. So
yeah, it's awesome.
Yeah.
Is he a dentist?
Yeah, he's a dentist. Yeah, he's a dentist.
Really cool guy. Yeah, I like that guy a lot. He's really nice. He's always reaching out to me. But yeah, that was an awesome experience where we, literally saved a person's life, And why I have a huge passion for Marek is because I know I did a lot of PEDs. I've talked a lot with like Fuad and Mark Bell about that and everything, but it was probably right around 2.5 years ago now that I one day was just like, this is stupid, I can change my focus. And it's kind of like, I'd say I
Oh,
probably
yeah.
started listening to you around there where I was like, I'm really getting more focused on longevity and health.
Yeah.
I didn't realize, which is silly, but I didn't realize all those years that I was doing so much damage to myself. I kind of was just under this, I joke about when we started, the forums would say, side effects, like you're going to have high blood pressure, but it's only while you're on cycle, don't worry about it. And then the other stuff was like what I call the aesthetic side effects now, the acne and the hair loss and the oily skin. I didn't really have any of those. My hair wasn't falling out. So I'm like, okay, I'm good. My acne, I had a few on my back, but unless, somebody saw me, it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
So I'm like, I'm not really getting side effects. This isn't anything wrong. And then I heard, GH15, you got to do 100 milligrams of Tren a day. And Boston Lloyd was back. Yeah, exactly. So I'm like, this is what the guys are doing. This is why they look that way and I don't. So I've got to load up on everything. And I did that shit for years. And I don't know why I wasn't thinking, this is causing damage. And it wasn't until people like yourself and Leo and Derek actually started talking like, these guys are fucking right. Like, and I'm like, duh, I talk a lot of crap sometimes about doctors where like, I'm like, why don't you understand basic biochemistry when they're saying, like carbohydrates are, and I'm like, don't you understand basic? And then I look at myself, I'm like, shit. Didn't I understand basic biochemistry? This stuff was really stupid. I just had my own biases and blinders on because I was doing it,
Yeah, you just listen to the wrong people, especially on the forum days. Everybody was hiding behind anonymity. So you think they talk a big game, so you think they know what they're talking about. But in reality, they were probably just gym bros, covered in pimples and hair loss and gyno and just pushing higher dosages because they were probably also selling it at the same time. And let's be honest, those sources at the GH15 board, those were great. But of course, pushing more drugs on your customers, makes the business runs a lot better. So I learned plenty of mistakes through the boards. But there was also good people like Professional Muscle and Intense Muscle, right? Those guys.
Professional Muscle was my favorite.
Yeah, so there and actually real names came from there. A lot of the IFBB pros and a lot of knowledgeable people in the fitness industry. And some of now the private Discord groups, there's a lot of knowledgeable people there who also post behind anonymity, but then when you see their face and you know exactly that they're backing it up. So a lot has changed, but I do feel that like guys like you and me who've been there and done that, they should just be out there with their face out in the open so people can see us and know like, okay, he made these mistakes, but at least he didn't die and now learned a lot from it and now tried to prevent other people from making the same mistakes.
Yeah,
and
exactly.
It's never too late. It's never too late to change,
That's true. Yeah. And see, the thing with me too is what, like, I'm big on like, guys, like I just never had the genetics. And I was, I felt like I was kind of lied to in that, or not lied to, but I guess I lied to myself even that it was just because I didn't have X drug yet, or I wasn't doing enough of this, or my source wasn't as good as theirs. And then eventually, I think everybody thinks that it's because I don't have growth hormone in. And then the time that I finally got growth hormone, because, gear's cheap. And then when I finally got my first like resident paycheck, because as a medical student and everything, you're living on debt every single day. Finally get a resident salary and I started spending it all on growth hormone. The only thing I fucking got was bloated. I remember the first time I did it, first few days, like 2 IUs, I'm like, all right, this isn't doing anything. I'm not changing in front of the mirror. Like, all right, let's go 4. And then still, I'm not seeing shit. And then, because this is how my mind was. So I go to 8 IUs. I work all day on the floors in the hospital. And then I head over
your
to the
ankles
gym.
Must have been like this.
Exactly. Thick. Yep. I got to the gym and I took off my scrubs and I looked down and I was like, oh my God, like I am embarrassed about how I look because my ankles are hanging over my shoes. Like I'm leaving my scrubs on and working on with long pants today. And then, after probably, I think like 5 or 6 months of growth hormone, I'm looking in the mirror and I'm like, I just look old. Like I thought this was supposed to make me, look more vibrant and everything. In the beginning, I felt like I did, but then, 6 months in of high doses, I'm just like, my skin is aging rapidly right now. I'm getting all these new wrinkles, like. And then, you look at guys on the IFBB stage, they're younger than me, and they look like they're 50. And I wasn't putting 2 and 2 together. And I'm like, everything that I'm doing is accelerating growth. And if you think about that, like that's accelerating aging. I don't know why I didn't put 2 and 2 together. And it was around that time, I'm like, I'm doing this shit backwards, man. I'm not making it. I'm not going to be one of those guys. I'm not going to be a pro. So I need to like reevaluate my, what I consider to be important.
Yeah, you're better off helping people, through these kinds of podcasts and helping people one-on-one through Marek Health. Yeah, and it's funny that even if you're a foot doctor and so knowledgeable about these things, that it can still happen. You just don't see it while it's happening, and then at one point you realize, like, wait a minute, what the hell's going on? And then you definitely feel lied to because these guys on the forums would just talk so much about doing more and more and more and more. But in reality, it's not the way for most people. And the pros, they know right away, they do their first or second cycle, they get great results, they blow past everybody else. And those guys end up being successful because they never really have to take much, so they don't burn out. It's like the gym bros, like you and me. We can build a decent physique, but not a great physique that's competitive. And then even if we build a great physique, we really have to abuse ourselves. I know now when I look back at older pictures when I was like 120 kilos, so that's 200, let's say 255, 260 pounds. Dude, I look older than I do now, but that's 5 years ago.
Right. It's crazy, huh?
Yeah. So now I'm trying to slowly undo some of the damage that I've done, with anti-aging protocols, NAD+, nicotinamide mononucleotide, and my diet was always on point. It's basically the same diet. I eat healthy, what is it? More expensive food, to quote unquote organic, but it's imported, so you don't have to worry about pesticides and antibiotics and that kind of stuff. So I spend all my money on food and pharmaceuticals, right? Not this underground stuff that used to promote on the boards. Yeah, and blood work, obviously, and organ imaging. And now slowly it's reversing. And even when I look back at a couple months ago when I was on cycle, I realized man, maybe that's not the look I want to go for anymore. I would like to have the muscles, but facially, it just destroys you.
It's crazy. Yeah. And I think you were probably the first one who I actually heard talking about that, because I was noticing it. And then I heard you talking, I'm like, why isn't anybody bringing this up? And, like I said, I started looking, I'm like, all these top IFBB guys are either my age or younger than me. And they literally look 20 years older than me, they're all super cool guys, but like, look at Ian Vier. The dude looks like he's in his 40s, he's in his 30s, and it's just like, they're just, because they're big, their face gets, they age out. It's just what it is.
That's why it's called bodybuilding. It's from the neck down. True. It's not from the face up. Yeah. Your body might look great, but from the face, from the neck up, man. Yeah. It's you get all the you get all these wrinkles here and then up here, and then even the skull grooves,
they get
which
all the bulldog wrinkles too.
Yeah, in the back. Yeah, I got a little bit of those, but thank God the camera's in the front. Yeah. Thank God. So, but it's such a learning experience for all of us. But I think through all those mistakes, you kind of learn like maybe this is not the right way, and then you can prevent all these other people who never even wanted to go to that direction. Like, hey, just slow down. Take it, respect these drugs, respect the lifestyle, and then you can use some of these tools to actually get into a better state of health.
Exactly.
It's just don't do these crazy experiments like we used to do. And stay away from the message boards. It's basically.
And the thing is like, I feel like we go after what the pros are doing, but most of us actually don't really want to look like those guys do, most kids don't, at least they don't want to be maybe you did because you actually had a true passion for bodybuilding for a while. I did too, but most guys, they just want to look good when the vacation comes around and they step out on the beach and they can get a few Instagram photos. Which for the vast majority of people, you could probably do natural. It literally just means having abs. That's all you really need. When people see abs, they automatically think, whoa, that's like a top 90, that's better than 99% of the population. You don't need gear to do that. You could probably do that naturally. And so don't chase what the IFBB pros are doing just to look like a natty dude. That's the thing. There's so many guys want to jump on cycle right away. I'm like, you really don't need it,
No, I mean, I was drug-free for 11 years in my bodybuilding journey. And I got abs every summer, show off on the beach for the 2 weeks that it's sunny in Holland. And then, of course, during winter, you kind of hide away to put on the size. So you put on your double hoodie because it's cold. And then the abs turn into like a 2-pack if you're lucky. But I did it many times drug-free. It's not rocket science. You just have to adhere to the diet. Of course, that's not very exciting. Everybody talks about trim bologna sandwiches nowadays. So
I know.
Yeah. Unfortunately, there's no script for that, guys.
Exactly. The way they talk about everything too is this like, in my opinion, nothing was ever really that special. And part of that goes into my genetics too, and if, like you talked about, I was talking to Justin Harris about this, how Ronnie, his first cycle, it's like 100 pounds of lean mass, which is just like unheard of ever. But it's like, that's somebody who's genetically gifted. Like when I did my first cycle of 500 milligrams of testosterone a week, I was really underwhelmed. And again, I thought, it's because my shit's bunk, or, it's not as good. I'll get a better brand next time, or I need to do a little bit more. And every time I was pretty underwhelmed. I'm like, I'm not turning into these guys. And I should have realized at that point, I just don't have the genetics for this, And I wish that I hope that I can impart that on other kids. Like, if you're not just blown away, like your physique transforms that first time around, you probably don't have the genetics and don't continue to pursue it. I mean, and the hard thing is
at least not the pro size, right? You can still build a respectable physique, but you give yourself like a 10-year timeline. Like it took me 10 years before I really was happy with my physique on PED. So that's 20 years into my bodybuilding journey. It's only been the last couple of years that I'm like, okay, finally now it looks like bodybuilder-esque. And then, I don't have any weak spots or not tremendous weak spots. Yeah, no, not anymore. The journey is already over. I might be able to get it back, but now the business is just so busy that I can't afford to be sleepy and tired and semi-hungry and moody and I can't afford it anymore. So I'll be happy to I'll just be happy to maintain like 90, 95 kilos, 100, maybe on cycle. Yeah. And I'd still do cycles. Like right now I'm off everything to get my wife pregnant because I don't believe that all these guys nowadays who want to stay on TRT. And I'm like, probably not a good idea, just come off.
Yeah. It's interesting. I don't know how to feel about that. Like, is it okay to just shut down your system indefinitely forever? I don't know.
Yeah, and back then we didn't know, so nobody talked about HCG on cycle. And then when you take HCG where you're running nandrolone and tren and ment and all these progestogenic 19-ors, which are basically contraceptives for men. Yeah, and ment was even designed as a contraceptive. It doesn't matter how much HCG you take, you just get shut down. Your testicles don't get any bigger. On tren, they're like, well, they're gone. They're in your body. That's how small they are. And then, when you realize as you get older, like, wait a minute, I shut my testicular function down for like almost a decade. How am I going to get everything back? Yeah. So you have to really plan ahead of what you're doing, what you're, undertaking and doing with your body, because 10 years later, you might have serious issues getting your fertility back, if that. And otherwise, it might take a year or 1.5 years. Some guys take that long, because they've been shut down so long.
I think you were probably one of the first guys out there talking about neurosteroid cascades. And I think that was just completely, no one talked about it. It was, you may find a heart attack
when I talked about that.
You may find somebody talking on bodybuilding.com about taking DHEA because it's a over-the-counter supplement that may cause an increase in testosterone. I had friends that would run DHEA that they could get at CVS or whatever. And we were like, ooh, that's like a precursor to testosterone. But nobody was talking about it while on cycle. And, there was a point in my career where suddenly I was just like libidoless, I was asexual, and my wife and I had a great sexual relationship. And then suddenly I was not turned on whatsoever. I didn't want anything. I'm like, what's going on? And I think the thing that really started my whole health journey was I was starting to feel stupid, to be honest. I felt like I had, my mental acuity, my verbal acuity was not there. I could not have this conversation.
Because you're broken. But it's also from the hard training,
Yeah, so that too. I was at a loss for words. Every other word, I'm like, I couldn't figure it out, like the words. So I get my labs done. My DHEA and pregnenolone both undetectable. And I'm like, how long has this been this way?
Oh my God.
Yeah, both of them. And because I just was never looking, nobody ever told you to look at that. What would we even look at? I think I looked at testosterone, estradiol.
Maybe. If you're lucky. Yeah.
That's about it.
SHBG in a blue moon once a year.
Oh yeah. I never even looked at SHBG because I'm just like, I'm probably crashing that. I know that's probably low, but it was crazy,
around.
And so, taking that, changed everything. I'm like, oh, my libido is back. I now have my verbal acuity is back to some extent. I still feel like I'm stupider than I once was. I wish that I wasn't, but that was something that nobody ever talked about. And I was super grateful for you for mentioning.
Cool. Yeah. I learned it from like the older people. Of course, DHEA and pregnenolone generally prescribed in the elderly. Because, testosterone and estradiol levels go down, and then later on, DHEA and pregnenolone levels go down. So they're basically neurosteroid deficient and sex hormone deficient at that age. And then when they start supplementing with DHEA and pregnenolone at pretty high dosages, we're talking about 100 milligrams per day of each, maybe 50 milligrams, depending on the age and the response, then, overall quality of life, cognition, verbal fluency, productivity, sex drive might even return. Even though when you're elderly, you probably don't even want to imagine that. Still, if they're happy, right? And then I looked at my own blood work results and I'm like, wait a minute, my DHEA sulfate and pregnenolone levels are exactly that low.
Yeah.
And this was years ago. So I started supplementing with them and then kind of figuring out the protocol and realized that 100 milligrams pregnenolone is way too high, right? Your progesterone levels go up and then aldosterone levels go up, so you start, holding a little bit of water, and you get this sedating effect, which might be helpful if you want to sleep, but pregnenolone levels don't have to be that. Progesterone levels don't have to be that high.
Right.
So I started experimenting with doses, and at one point, this experiment actually played out because I decided to myself, didn't get it from the boards. And now a lot of people, notice their benefits that, you have the cookie cutter HRT protocol instead of cookie cutter TRT. You look at your testosterone levels, your estradiol levels, your SHBG levels, your DHEA, your pregnenolone, and then you have HCG or something else in the picture to sustain testicular function to get a little bit of the backfill and more stable levels. And then quality of life is 10 times better for the people who follow the lifestyle. Like some people don't respond to testosterone, right? And HCG and DHEA and pregnenolone.
Yeah.
But I found that, I'm going to be blunt, most of these guys are just not healthy.
Exactly, 100%. Yeah, and that's why I kind of brought it up was the idea that people get on this stuff at a young age and just think about testosterone. When you shut down your testosterone, you're not only shutting down the testosterone, but all of those byproducts that are made in the production from pregnenolone to testosterone. There's a lot of cascades that occur. And you've just shut down the entire tree, and now you're only getting the end product, which is great, but we neglect all that other stuff. And what I see often too is the younger you are when you start, usually the lower those levels are for some reason. It seems to have some really suppressing effect on it, especially guys who cycle younger. Their DHEA, pregnenolone, seem to just be crash moving forward. And that leads to anxiety and low libido and poor mental acuity, brain fog, all that kind of stuff. And then they throw finasteride in there or something too. And they already have double digit, like really low pregnenolone, and then they're blocking the conversion of progesterone to allopregnenolone, and they just feel awful, and they don't know why, and then they get put on an SSRI. It's just like this cascading effect. It's crazy.
Yeah, and good luck trying to finish school, in that sense, when you feel absolutely horrible. No, it's very sad, and then understandably so, because you and me have made the similar mistakes. But I think now with the information that is out there, you can educate yourself a lot better nowadays about what to do and when to start and, what to look for and which blood work to do. But then it's still up to the user. And we're all drug users, basically, unless it's medically prescribed and you need it medically. But most of the guys that start self-experimenting as a drug user, and you have to do the research before you start driving.
Yeah.
I think nowadays there's no excuse anymore to start doing oral only cycles or just doing train only cycles or that kind of stuff. I mean, the information is there. All you need to do is spend like at least a month learning, and ideally longer, and then keep learning, right? You're never done learning once you start this journey. Because the body changes,
Oral and trend only cycles are crazy. Like, if I was able to figure that as a bad thing out 10 years ago, you can definitely figure that out nowadays.
Exactly. It's still being done, dude. I have consultations every week. Like I used to do an oral only cycle or pro hormones back in the day.
Yeah.
Some of these guys are permanently shut down. Their testosterone is like 240. I just referred yesterday, another guy did pro hormones at 15 years old, bought it at GNC, and the guy just sold it to him. Like, you just run this, like M-Drol or T-Drol or whatever it's called. And he just ran it and he never recovered.
It's wild. And now we have SARMs. I think SARMs are just, I see so much suppression with SARMs. It's insane. Yeah, I see guys, their labs look worse than if they would have just done a full-blown cycle. And you should have just done, 500 milligrams of testosterone. You would have been better off.
Yeah, it's a Manavar job done.
Exactly. Not only are they suppressed, their liver enzymes look like SARMs are insane to the ALT, AST. Like their transaminases are just off the chart. I'm like, this is insane. Why would you do this? I mean, and why would you do this? I've done them too, but at least I had testosterone in the background. There was a point when I threw them in. I remember being in school and, man, what's the one that makes you see yellow? Because that one fucked me up, man. I would be in the OR.
S4?
I think so.
Yeah.
Yeah. I remember being in the OR as a student, and you're already like, you're getting what we call pimped, which is basically just you're getting drilled with questions all the time. So they're like, what's this structure? And they're like in a body cavity and everything just looks yellow. I'm like, fuck, I can't see anything because the bright light's shining down. And I'm like trying to look out the side of my eyes. And I can specifically remember a time. It was pretty bad because the OR lights are so bright that it just boom, everything gets yellow.
And it contrasts with that green, cover that they have during surgery. Imagine if you do like a clomiphene as a base and then S4 on top. I mean, you wouldn't be able to see. You wouldn't be able to see anything. You got these ocular changes from the clomid to sustain my LH and FSH levels. And then you throw the S4 in there. Like there's actually kids doing that. They don't want to inject. So they just take Clomid and S4, and then they can't even look. They can't. And imagine them driving, learning how to drive.
Oh, I know. It's crazy. When all they really have to do is learn how to eat at that age. They've got there's something special about like the pubertal testosterone. We all know there's something magical about that from a libido standpoint, from a growth standpoint.
100%.
Yeah,
100%.
The guys who, I think everybody has one person who, when they're growing up, really does everything right in like high school, and they're just like, everyone's like, you're on steroids, but no, they're just on that natural like puberty. It's insane. I had a dude who he freaking looked like you at like 16. This dude was just jacked, but he was doing everything perfectly. He lived like a monk. He would be busting out his Tupperware. This was back in 2003. Nobody was doing this stuff like he was. He would be in the gym at lunch. He would do like double days. Looked amazing.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it was like
outliers, right?
Yeah, and I'm like, man, if anybody would just capitalize on that time, you could really put yourself levels ahead. But instead, they just jump straight to the SARM or the whatever it is.
Yeah.
Nowadays,
I know.
TRT. Everybody thinks they need TRT, which I'm like, first of all, this is not TRT. You're not replacing anything. We're not filling in a gap.
600. You don't need it. Yeah,
exactly.
Just say that you want to go on cycle. It's fine.
Yeah, exactly.
Right?
That's what it is. I'm like, this is a cycle. This isn't TRT.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Did that guy from 2003, did he turn pro though?
Oh, I don't know what happened to him. I'm always looking for him online. I'm like, his name was David Laird. If you're out there, man. He was, he looked great. He was actually really into
bodybuilding. He's probably following this YouTube channel.
Yeah, he probably is. He was really into wrestling and like football. So I would imagine he probably got more into like CrossFit or something like that, because he was much more of an athlete. His physique looked like a bodybuilder. He looked great, but he was very athletic. So he probably would have crushed it in an athletic sport.
Yeah. This is one 1% guy that actually made it somewhere by being that disciplined at such a young age.
Yeah.
All those missed parties paid off.
Exactly. Yeah. But those kids, I get so many young guys in who think that they need, TRT and I'm like, dude, your testosterone's fine. You just need to learn how to eat. Cause I'm telling you, I did years of cycling and shit. I never made that many gains. The one time that I made the very best gains was on the least amount of stuff. And I finally decided I'm going to dial in my diet, eat till I'm sick 5 times a day, and then train until I'm sick. I'm just going to actually push it hard. It wasn't about the gear. I was always under this impression that the more gear I do, everything else will kind of take care of itself if I do it kind of half-assed, which I was totally messed up,
Well, if you're on enough trend, and the trend will kind of take care of yourself, but then you're such a moody asshole that nobody wants to be around. Like, you got this great physique, but everybody's like, oh, this guy is like, oh, stay away.
Yeah.
This guy's
that's
bad
true.
news.
Yeah. But still, even with I had good amounts of tren in my body at a lot of times, and I looked good, obviously, but I wasn't getting the crazy results because the muscle's not going to build itself out of thin air. You need the food, right. And the people usually don't dial in the food. I have guys tell me, I eat so much. I'm like, what are you eating? And then they're like, 2,000, 3,000 calories. I'm like, you don't even know, first of all. I'm like, all right, let's go over it. And I'm like, yeah, that's 1,800 calories. My breakfast is that big, That's why you're not gaining, start eating 4,000 calories consistently for the next 6 months and then tell me you didn't gain weight. It's going to be impossible to do so,
I think a lot of people underestimate that this, you should treat it like a job, the amount of food that you need to eat, even if you just want to stay healthy, maintaining your health is basically a full-time job. Just making sure that you have good food, supplements, you're doing the blood work, maybe some TRT if it's necessary, or you want to use it for other purposes. It's not TRT, but you just want to be on cycle. Cool. Just admit to it. Right. We're all friends here, right? But just don't call it TRT. Just you're on cycle, right? Or HRT plus, whatever you want to call it. And, I think if you dial everything in, you'll realize that you can get away with a lot less. You don't have to compromise your health. But you'll lose maybe 2 extra hours out of the day because the cooking and the proper injections and sterile injection practices, and it takes a little bit longer. And going to the hospital to do blood work and doing consultations with a guy like you or me to actually set you on the path and keep you focused. Because a lot of guys have great ideas, but most of those ideas are, I've been there. You just need to kind of reel them back in, like maybe wait a little bit, and then let's figure out how we can do this as safely as possible. But if you want to be a bodybuilder, then that's kind of out the window. You have to take risks. Yeah, and I would say and I'm sure you would agree. Those people who actually can be a successful bodybuilder is probably 1 or 2% of the population. It's very, very low, maybe even less than that.
if you just want to be a dude who looks really good with their shirt off and then also feels really good and gets the benefits of testosterone, that's not that hard. It doesn't take that much. Oftentimes you can do so naturally. But if you do need to supplement with some amount to get you to that upper end of normal, I would say first, though, you need to spend probably 6 months to a year really getting your house in order and checking off all those boxes. Like when somebody comes to me, I don't feel good. The thing with testosterone is it's so easy to sell because you just tell people like, do you feel tired at the end of the day? Like, do you ever not want to go to the gym?
You just say yes. Yeah.
And everybody's like, oh, me, I need testosterone. That's why I'm not motivated to go to the gym at 5 a.m. No, so it's really easy as a company to sell it to you. But if you're checking off all those boxes where and you're not lying to yourself, that diet's under control, sleep is good, you're getting sunlight, you have good relationships, you have all of these things and there's still something off, that's when testosterone can really benefit you. But if you just throw testosterone in the mix and you don't have all those boxes off, you're just actually probably going to fuck yourself up even worse. I have this ongoing theory, and maybe you'll have some science to it, but there's we see in unhealthy guys testosterone declines, and the way that I look at it is our bodies don't usually do many things by coincidence. If hormone levels are low, it's probably for a pretty good reason. So we know that elevated inflammatory markers, elevated insulin markers, they do suppress testosterone. But maybe there's kind of a built-in mechanism for that says when somebody's insulin resistant, they shouldn't have higher levels of testosterone because it has deleterious effects, and that's kind of how I see it. Yeah. Because when you put testosterone into a very unhealthy body, that's when all the side effects explode. Yeah. Like if I have an obese guy who just uses testosterone, I get them back and their hematocrit's like 58. And it's just like, red blood cell counts off the chart. They have high blood pressure. They're getting acne. And then they're converting a shit ton to estradiol. They hardly even have any free testosterone still. And I'm like, this is why we should have waited. We should have got you to a lower body fat percent. We should have improved your insulin sensitivity and made you a vessel that can accept that, And I see great results with guys who do that. The guys who will put in the 6 months work up front and get really, really healthy. And then they're like, okay, can I have it now? And I'm like, yeah, let's do it. And then, then they're like, oh, these results are amazing. Everything is awesome. Their red blood cell count doesn't even budge. Their estradiol is nice and low. They're not taking any AIs. Their blood pressure's fine. They're making gains. Their skin is smooth. They feel amazing. They're cognitively there. They're having great sex. And, guys just want to jump to the drug, but I'm like, it's not that, it's everything else. And that just helps to kind of, it makes all that hard work that you've been doing, you can actually start yielding the results from it a little bit more,
Agree. Yeah. I think with TRT, it should be the same as those old cycles when you had to earn it in the gym. So in the gym, nobody would talk to you about it, right? You had to deadlift, 5 plates and bench 3 plates and squat 4 plates. And even though I never got to the 3 plate bench, I did do the deadlift 5 plates and squat 4 plates. And then people were kind of, okay, now you work hard, right? You've put in the work, you know how to diet, you know how to train, you know how to program your workouts. Now we can talk about it a little bit, And then, of course, it would still be 500 tests in the Devo Kickstart, which was horrible advice. But at least, you felt like the community gave you an opportunity to kind of get started. Yeah. And I think it's the same with TRT. You just have to earn it first, get into this good state of health. And it's not a sports car that you just haphazardly buy, right? Even a Ferrari, you need to learn how to drive. It drives completely different than the Toyota you've been driving. If you can make that jump from a Toyota to a Ferrari, it takes a lot of Bitcoin millionaire, mentality to make that jump.
Does.
So I think, for the guys that like slowly improve their state of health, with guidance, I mean, they can get so much more out of it. But you do see it with the guys that just start haphazardly when they're unhealthy. They get all the side effects, and usually a majority of them. If you have sleep apnea, you're going to go into testosterone, man, hematocrit sky high. You sleep even worse. You don't sleep at all.
Exactly. Yeah. Because one, because the sleep apnea is worse. Their sympathetic overdrive's insane. They already have super low SHBG because the high insulinemia that they have is suppressing it, so they're just getting all this free testosterone right off the bat that's then converting over into estradiol. They're getting water retention. They've got insomnia. It's just not a good thing. And, people think that that's going to be the fuel that helps them to get healthy, but it really, I don't think it does. It can take somebody who's kind of on the edge of almost being healthy and put them there for sure. It can certainly improve metabolic health, but it doesn't take a very unhealthy person and make them healthy. It usually just makes it worse from my experience, And I do wish that, it's hard. So I'm sympathetic to the fact that now you have insulin resistance, you're pre-diabetic, you're obese, and your testosterone suppressed. So now you have no motivation to get up and to do the thing. And you need the testosterone for the motivation. But I'm like, you do need to build up a little bit of that internal inherent motivation yourself, and learn this. And then eventually it's going to be hard for these 6 months. But when you get there, that testosterone is going to make that easier, and you're already going to have built those practices.
I think it might be better just to put these guys in sort of nootropic stack with dopamine increasing stuff to promote the motivation that way. So if you do a little bit of L-tyrosine or some Gorilla Mind supplements, maybe they can get out the door that way. And once they start adopting the lifestyle. But I think the majority of the changes for these people are going to come when they improve their diet and just simply walk around a bit more, because you don't get obese and into a type 2 diabetic state by accident. That's lifestyle.
100%.
So you have to do the opposite. And if you still have sleep apnea when you're under 180 pounds or 200 pounds, okay, it's genetic, probably hereditary. Somebody in your family probably also has it, but a lot of people can get a lot of their issues resolved just by improving their health without the drugs. And then, of course, later on, if it's still on the table, okay, go for it. You'll have my blessing and your blessing. And then the outcome is like, oh man, best thing ever. I'm happy I waited this long. Yeah.
It's very rare that I have people who actually listen to me because they think I'm just full of shit. No, I need the testosterone.
I have to learn the hard way.
There's a guy who did a Trustpilot review on Marek the other day who wrote like a novel about how he came to Marek, and he was kind of disappointed because at first we told him not to do testosterone. We didn't want to put him there yet because he was insulin resistant. His lipids were a bit skewed. And he was like, you know what? I thought, whatever, this is only 6 months of my time. What's 6 months? I'll listen to them and I'll do it the right way. So we actually referred him to my wife, who's a dietitian. That's what Atlas is about. Right. So he worked with her for the first 6 months, and he put on a significant amount of lean mass while also improving metabolic health and lowering lipids. Sure. And he came back and we're like, dude, your labs are good. Let's start this. This past year, I just saw him in a consult the other day, and I was like, I can't recognize you, man. Like, you look awesome.
No,
like,
turned it around, right?
Yeah. His chin is chiseled. I could see delts and traps. And this is only on 120 milligrams of testosterone a week. And he was like, my mind is so changed now too. He's like, I don't even care where my testosterone is. Tell me where my ApoB is. Tell me where my insulin is. Like, he's chasing all these health metrics and feeling so good. He's excelling in business. His marriage is doing great. Like, he's hitting all these lifts. I started following him on Instagram, and he's like killing it. I'm like, dude, this is awesome. He's not turned into a bodybuilder by any means, but he's turned into a very successful, high performing male, which is, I would say, what 90% of us want to be, is just, a really an attractive dude to other females who excels in business and family and everything else, and it can get you that way, but you got to do all the hard shit first.
Yeah. And if he didn't persist, he could have ended up with a TRT clinic that would have prescribed him 18 IUs of growth hormone.
Oh yeah.
and then end up in a completely, unhealthy state of, unhealthy state. So yeah, you really have to be careful, because there's plenty of TRT clinics out there. And I know they reach out and ask them, what is your setup? And I can't agree with that stuff at all.
Man,
it's a minefield, it's a minefield right now. That's why they probably wanted to, do a little bit of this telemedicine restriction, which I don't think is going to go through based on what I talked to with, what is it? The
Rick?
Rick Collins. Yeah. So there seems to be a little bit of a postponing on that new rule, but it might be better for some people just to have like proper guidance, because there's so many TRT clinics now, and some of them which are already have gone belly up. They're actually glorified steroid dealers.
That's 100% what they are. Yeah. I get guys who come in, and I'm like, because at first I see their labs before I ever meet them face to face. And I usually just look at labs first to read my story, and then I hear from them. And usually I can already tell you their story just by reading the labs, But I see guys who their levels are above 2,000 nanograms per deciliter on testosterone. I'm like, what are you on? And they're like, oh, I'm on just TRT from blah, blah, blah clinic. I'm on 350 milligrams of testosterone a week, 250 nandrolone. They put them on 50 Anavar just year round. I'm like, 50? Yeah. Holy shit. Yeah. Like, if we ever use that, which is rare, it's like 11.5 milligrams, maybe a few times a week to suppress SHBG, and those who are SHBG kind of like resistant, who have, elevated levels. And they're on growth hormone, and then they're like, oh, and I do growth hormone these days, testosterone, ipamorelin on these other days, and just like, oh my God, this is crazy. Yeah.
I've seen it a lot.
The thing is too, is like, I was like, why are they doing this? This is crazy. And then one of the PCCs was like, well, yeah, I've worked at these clinics, and if you give them those higher scripts like that, the turnover's faster because they're getting through their supply faster. If you can prescribe a guy 200 milligrams a week, obviously you're going to sell more than 100 milligrams a week. And I'm like, oh, why didn't I ever think about that? It's because doctors like myself, I can't make money off of drugs. So I'm never thinking about it from like, how can I sell more? But because I was like, how the hell, why are they doing this? And then I'm like, oh, that makes sense. So you're literally.
Don't have the mindset of a drug dealer. But these other clinics do.
It's insane.
They'll put you on everything. And I have consultations with these guys. And even in Thailand, they have clinics like this where they just overprescribe. They put them on Trembolone also. Just from underground labs. No, it's a minefield here. Yeah. They just prescribe underground stuff from India, which is highly inflammatory. This carrier oil is basically poison. And they just prescribe it. And there's no oversight. They got their initial license to operate this business, but no continuous checkups. Like some of the pharmacies do. They need to have their pharmacy license. And, the FDA once in a while comes in to make sure everything is on point. But apparently with these TRT clinics, it doesn't happen. And they're under a slew of stuff. And it all comes from India. And I'm like, how's it possible? India has 2 pharmaceutical products, so for TRT. So it's crazy. Guys, you have to do your due diligence because it's not every TRT clinic is the same,
Right. Yeah. I mean, I like to say, I don't even like when Marek gets called a TRT clinic. I kind of hate the term because I'm like, a bulk of our guys don't even get put on TRT. Like this is just a health clinic. It's the answer to, I look at health right now, like Peter Attia calls it, the health 2.0 versus 3.0, et cetera. Like health that we can get here in Western medicine is like when you have a disease and they want to get you to a disease state where you're not going to die. And like you go to Marek when you want to prevent disease and bring a healthy person healthier. Sometimes that involves testosterone, but it's not always. It's like I don't even care about it. It's so boring to me now that I've been around the block so many times. Like
just as a very small part of what you can actually do with people. Yeah.
Just like this patient that I saw who was like, yeah, testosterone, cool. Cool. I have a 700. I don't really care. I feel fine. Let's talk about my ApoB or something, because you're just like, testosterone, it gets kind of mystified as being something so miraculous. And then after you do it a long enough time, you're like, cool, whatever. Like,
what else can we do? What supplements, what diet, what lifestyle changes, NAD plus and anti-aging stuff. And I think that's ultimately the next step for most guys once they dial in their health. Then you have the anti-aging. Because you work at a higher level, like I do. I work 10 times better at doing all these little micro adjustments for longevity. My work capacity is 10 times higher than most guys. That's why success is just going up. And then you start to optimize those kinds of things so you can work longer and harder and sleep less, but still get high quality sleep. And those kinds of things you can really optimize once you get that initial health situation under control. But it's a step-by-step process, and then you realize that you doubled your salary. Now you're spending 3 times as much as you used to do on health supplements, but it's paying off. It's literally an investment into yourself, right?
And now you care way more about longevity because you have a lot of money. I saw an interesting study recently. I can't remember who posted it, and then I went and looked at the paper myself. But they essentially, everybody talks about, at least in the U.S., that people who are poor have, poor health outcomes, and it's because they have less access to medicine or whatever. Well, this paper kind of turned that on its head, where they gave access to lower income families and everything, and they still didn't really seek the treatment, and their health metrics didn't improve at all.
Really?
And so what they kind of theorized and talked about in there is that more affluent, richer populations care more about their longevity because they're looking into the future a lot more than people who don't make money are. So, once you start making money, you're like, well, now I want to be able to use this. Like I care a lot about what I'm going to be when I'm 50. I'm going to get that yacht because I want to be able to use all this money. Where when you're living paycheck to paycheck, you're just thinking about a week or two later. You're not thinking about So that's kind of interesting, just an aside. But the more money I make, the more I'm like, I really need to still be performing really well when I'm older, so I can use this.
Yeah, and also for the next generation, right? You want to be around. Like the problem with successful people is that they procrastinate on having kids. Like I've been procrastinating for the last 15 years because I wanted to get at a certain financial situation. My parents had me when they were like 27, 28, and I'm 40 this year. And now we're trying. Right? Because I wanted to have like some sort of, financial security, which actually I reached a couple of years ago, but then you still want to have more and more and more.
I know.
And now we're finally at that point, like, you can have kids and then take a step back from the business so I can just spend more quality and quantity time with my kids, when they're born finally. And you just realize like, wait a minute. So first I had to be financially secure, and now I have to see the next, well, let's say 25 years after that out, so I can guide my kids to the point they're like 25 years old. Like 18, you're not mature. Let's be honest. I wasn't mature at 18 years old. I started traveling the world when I was like 25, 26 years old. And I think at that point, to that age, you're kind of, seen everything and done that, and you can kind of be on your own again without parental supervision. So that means I need to make it last until 65 at least. And then you realize like all the really bad stuff I did with my body when I was younger, can't get away with that anymore.
Yeah,
I gotta ride this one out. So yeah, you get a little bit more restrictive that way, just to, see your kids and all the way to the end. Yeah,
man, the whole success thing is so hard for me, man. Like I feel like the more successful I get, the less content I am. Do you feel that way? It sounds like you're probably pretty similar. Yeah,
it's never enough. You said goals, you reach them faster than expected, and then you look. The journey there was great, but the reaching the goal was like,
I know.
Let's do another goal, right?
Exactly.
And you just got to raise it, and it's not about like getting a certain amount of money so you can buy stuff. It's more about what you accomplish along the way. How many people can I improve their lives of? How many people can I touch? And in a positive sense. And the only real way to realize that is when you go to these conventions. Like, are you going to be at Swiss?
Well,
Swiss seminar. Yeah, so I'll be there. Right?
Oh, nice.
And then you can, I'll be speaking for a full 15 minutes.
I think I will be too. I think I got to do it. I got thrown into the steroid panel last time, man. I came straight off a flight, and then I get there and they like call me out and I'm like, fuck, like talking about sympathetic overdrive. Like, it was Dr. Serrano up there, Rick Collins, Dave Tate, and I hadn't even really met him yet. Victoria whatever. Yeah. It's all these people that I've been looking. They're like, yeah, come sit up next to them. I'm like, fuck. And I'm up there. I'm like, all right, calm down, breathe in. Because, I got called up to debate these guys, but it was fun. It was a good time.
Yeah, it's fun. So I'll be there for 15 minutes. And then right when you go to a seminar like this or the Mr. Olympia or Arnold Classic or where a lot of people, of our fitness industry gravitate, you start meeting all the people that you actually helped, with really YouTube or one-on-one. It's super cool, man. Yeah. It's super cool. So that's where most of my gratification comes from nowadays, like all the people that don't have to make the same mistakes that we made. Yeah, the more the merrier, So if I can get it to a million people that I help, man, it would be absolutely fantastic. But step one is 100,000.
You're almost there, right? What are we at, 80,000 or something?
84. Yeah, it's growing fast with collaborations like this. It's growing faster. So maybe 100,000 by the Olympia.
Yeah, let's do it. I'll have to go to that too.
Yeah, I'll be there. I'll be in the US for 2 weeks.
Awesome,
this time. Maybe 3 weeks. Maybe I'll swing past Vancouver if Derek can get out of his man cave.
Yeah,
the sauna. I might swing past Derek and do something in person, but we'll have to plan it accordingly because this guy's so busy. It's unbelievable.
Yeah, that'd be awesome. But yeah, man, I feel like the more successful I get too, like the wealthier I get, the frugaler I get. And I'm just like, when am I ever going to be happy? And that's like something that now I'm working on because there's all these different metrics of like health and, you dial in lab work. And then I'm like, I still have this whole like spiritual health stuff that I need to investigate and relationships and stuff. And these are things that a lot of people don't talk about, which I'm very happy that Marek Health does. We have PCCs who will talk to their patients about that kind of stuff because, lab work is one aspect of health and it's this multifaceted, arena. And, you're not going to feel good even if the lab work's dialed in when your relationships are shit and you don't have spiritual health and, or you're not happy at your job or you're just grinding and you don't even know why. And, so it's just kind of interesting. And that kind of stuff is what I'm more working on now. That's what's been fun with my podcast too, is just kind of like, I don't know if you feel this way, but sometimes just talking to another dude is super cathartic. It's like, it's just so nice,
It helps, especially if they're both driven, and you talk about the struggles along the way. It helps a lot, man. Yeah. That's why your network needs to be super important, but filled with, high value guys that are just wanting to get most out of life because we only have 80 quality years and the first 40 are already behind me. So I'm halfway there. Yeah. And then after that, I don't know what to expect after 80 years old. I can't foresee it. So you realize like, man, you have limited time and there's so much left to do and to improve. So you need to talk with guys that are actually doing that as well. And just omit all the guys who are not doing that because otherwise it just weigh down.
100%. Yeah, I saw this thing. It was like, like a screenshot of Twitter or something. Some girls like, why do guys start podcasts instead of just going to therapy? Like, yeah, that's exactly what we do. So
Yeah, that's the
let's
same
just start
thing.
a podcast
Yeah.
so we can talk to other dudes. But
Exactly. You put it out there publicly, and then other dudes can comment, and learn from it as well. Yeah.
And I think that's like a huge thing for men who are listening, is just get some other dudes that you can talk to, whether it's, I don't care if it's on a forum or whatever, but just talk to other dudes. I don't think we do that enough anymore. After like college, you don't, you usually find a spouse and then you just go off with her and she has girls' nights and the dude stays in and just like, I get to stay home alone. But a lot of guys don't have enough dude friends. And that's something I've been trying to work on too, is like, let's meet some guys who I can just talk to, because there's some shit on my chest that I would otherwise just hold in. And then that leads to, other deleterious effects downstream too, because you're just not talking. And so it's there's all this stuff that we don't talk about. The testosterone's flashy and cool, but there's so many levels to this.
It's very superficial, right? If you really get into the business and the mental health, I mean, there's so many levels to that. What I found works well is if you build up like a respectful relationship, friendship with people you also do business with. You do collaborations like this, and you turn that into a friendship because there's mutual respect there.
Yeah.
And, you go to the gym, of course, everybody come from different aspects of life. So you can meet interesting people at the gym, but since there's so many people there, it might not always play out. Like the amount of friends that I made in the gym the last 10 years, I can count on one hand. But I talked to plenty of dudes there. But not everybody's on that level where I want to spend extra time with them talking about business, because most guys just go there to bodybuild or just have a workout, and they don't really care about that, right? So finding quality people in your life is difficult, but through YouTube you see a lot more people are highly driven and they're out there just trying to educate and being part of the fitness industry or the longevity industry or whatever. And that way you can actually meet a ton of people. I met, like, when I went to Las Vegas, for example, I tried to follow a couple of people who document Las Vegas from a hotel perspective, activity, right, discounts, that kind of stuff. And I met two super cool dudes through that industry, all high value, super interesting, like great go-getters, right? And then you meet them in real life and you realize, they're on TRT too. They just don't talk about it. Of course. So that was so funny, right? And they follow you back for the TRT advice, and I follow them for the Las Vegas advice. And you see that there's so many, cool guys on this planet who all end up doing the same thing. They learn a lot in their life, and then they're on YouTube trying to give back. And super cool people to hang out with in real life.
There's so many of those cliches of, like surround yourself with people you want to be like and stuff like that, but YouTube's a cool thing because you kind of get a glimpse into these people's life, and it's just crazy how things happen, like if you just keep chipping away day after day, eventually, like literally, Derek was somebody, I didn't watch a lot of Derek's stuff, but I knew who he was and had mad respect. I'm like, this dude's killing it, for when I listened to him, I'm like, this guy is very educated for not being like medically trained or anything. And I thought, he was a little bit younger, like his demographic was a little bit younger than I was at the time, but I still had mad respect for him. Like, it's awesome. And then he's in my DMs one day and I'm like, what the fuck? Like, because I just kept chipping away at my, stuff. And then, like I said, I was listening to you and now I'm sitting here talking to you. And I'm like, 2 years ago, I'd be watching your YouTube.
Yeah, that's how it goes. That's how it goes. I mean, I was the same. I was like some background coach here in Asia. And then suddenly Derek is in my inbox. Yeah. Like, I saw some videos you did with Tony Huge and Dan the bodybuilder in Thailand. Can we, and then, and because of Derek, I had a huge push on social media, and he tried, said, just go on social media, it'll pay off. And now we're here, and now I can have, podcasts with Stan Everding and Derek and bigger names. And at one point you'll be in the same position, right? Yeah. You'll have guys that with like 1,000 followers that like, he can be on your podcast. And then you're like, I like this guy.
Yeah.
This guy's smart.
It's awesome.
Right? I love that stuff,
It's awesome to pay it forward too, when you can help other people, and it just, I don't know, all these little things they said are cliche. They really just, it helps propel your life so much. It's really cool.
It's true. You have to get smart enough to be in a position where you can give back, and then you give back to the people who want to take that opportunity, So I'll see in 2 or 3 years, you'll get the same thing. People who are watching your podcast and follow you and all the other collaborations, and they're like, man, really like Adam. He's so smart about everything. And then they do a collab with you, and then you realize that these guys are super smart also. Just need a little bit of a head start or a kick in the butt. Like,
it's cool stuff, man.
It sucks the comment section, but it's still.
Oh man, that fucking comment section, dude! I got it. Did you see? I got a whole Nick Fragilli video made about me too.
I saw that.
Was good stuff. Yeah.
Me and Derek.
I was like, I made it.
Yeah. me and Derek had a good conversation about some private messages he got from Corey way back in the day, 2 years ago. It's like, oh man, she went from expert or from knowing nothing at all to expert in 2 years.
Yeah.
Big ups, right? But she's doing her part. She's giving back, so I can't hate. But
no, I don't hate on either of them. I was like, when I looked at her stuff, I was like, I actually really like this stuff. It's really good. Yeah. And then, Nick is obviously growing a huge following on his own.
Not anymore.
True. Maybe on Rumble.
Well,
I don't know how that goes.
It's horrible, Yeah, you got banned 3 times now. Yeah, so maybe he'll be back. But
he's a smart dude. He does well when he does it,
You can't push the buttons too far, You piss off too many people, you get canceled. It's that simple. Yeah. So
but
hopefully
when
you learn
that
this
happened,
lesson.
I was like, man, I made it in this world, like the bodybuilding world. Like I'm on the cover of a Nick Trigili video. This is fucking sick. I mean, I didn't think that way at first, but it was that overall really good experience for me. There was so much love in the comments. I was like, this is cool. Usually the comments, man, true. Comments are terrible usually. Fuck.
They'll tear you down, but if they start, pulling for you, then it's good,
Yeah, it's pretty cool.
Yeah, I think my first claim to fame was the Liver King debacle.
Oh yeah, of course.
And then I suddenly was everywhere. I think Greg Duchette made like 10 videos about me. Oh really? That was a lot of free advertisement. Thanks.
Yeah.
Still don't like that guy. So that's the YouTube game, right? Eventually, you get shared on different platforms, and most of the time it's positive, and sometimes people design a narrative and they want to get at you, and you got to have a thick skin, man, because that's why Joe Rogan always says it's just don't read the comments anymore.
That's true,
because it's just too crazy. I still read them. I like my comment section.
Man, I hate the comments, man. I'm just like the thing is for me, it's so wild for me to read when people are negative because. I have never once come across something that I don't like and thought to comment my dislike about it. And
no, you just exit and then you just stop the video. You're like, this is not waste my time.
I'm like, this guy's an idiot, douche. Like, move on. I would never be like, write down, you douche, you fucking ugly asshole or something. Like, if I was that mad, or if I commented, I would have to be so extremely mad that when I see people comment something bad about me, my mind goes to. Like they must really hate me. Like I must really hurt them to cause them to want to comment. And then I realized that we're just in this age where no one even thinks. They literally just, immediately on their thumbs, like the first thing that comes to their mind, they put down. They don't think about things, And so I'm like, okay, this person thought about me for a millisecond, commented something mean and moved on, and they've forgotten all about it. So but it's crazy to me because normal human beings don't do that.
Not in real life, unless usually in real life when you talk like that, there might be a fight breaking out,
right?
And then there's always like a little bit of mutual respect between men, even if you don't like each other. Like, wait a minute, if I push the buttons too far, then I might get hit, and then the legal repercussions might be even worse. But I think it's those guys that are just in such a poor state of health that they're all perpetually moody, and they need to vent. Too. And instead of putting that 6 months in before TRT, they probably went on TRT and got all the side effects, and now their blood pressure's high. Oxidative stress, getting older, sleep apnea, just feel bad. They're following us because they want to get the advice, but they're not there yet. So I always see like a patient. I see a patient there. This guy needs help, but needs medical help. I'm serious. Needs
you drop just comment your email
health.
Like you need help, buddy. Hey, here's a consult. Free consult.
I don't reply because. Or sometimes I reply, but then it's something witty. And sometimes I let go and I make a stupid comment, but shit happens. I'm only human. Yeah. But what I think is most of these guys are just they need help, but I'm not going to provide it because now you bring negativity to my doorstep. Yeah. So I either will block you, and you'll have to figure it out yourself, just like I figured it out. I mean, I made mistakes. I was in that position at one point in my life where I was anonymous on the forums, just talking trash because I was not healthy and not. Good financial state and not good mental state. But I got myself out of it eventually. So, for all the guys that post shit, you just need some help. You should won't get it from me.
I think you're right, man. I think it's funny because people like Huberman have I was just thinking about this yesterday. Like Huberman has blown up and it's so funny because, I think about my friend Dave Lee. I don't know if you're familiar with Dave, but he talks about like, if you really want to be healthy, you should just do all the things that your grandma would have told you to do. And I'm like, this is so true. Because it's like, Huberman has built a, 2 million plus following on literally telling you the things that our parents would have said to do. Go play outside. Don't watch video. Don't play video games, go exercise a little bit, eat things that grow and live. It's like the easiest shit he's said. And for some reason now people are so unhealthy that is like mind blowing to them to like, whoa, I should get sunlight, And I think that you're totally right that we see this generation, we can see the unhealth spewed out in these comments because people are so unhealthy and so unhappy. And that's why, Huberman gets a lot of shit from the scientific community and stuff. But I'm like, dude, like, who cares if this isn't evidence-based? Like, we all know we feel better when we go outside, when we eat things that lived, like, when we just have community, when we meditate a little bit, and we all feel so much better. I don't give a shit if there's not a randomized control trial about it. Like, just get off your phone and go exercise a little bit, start eating micronutrients and macronutrients and keeping your calories in line and exercising a bit and get cold, get hot, get uncomfortable every now and then. And like, it's so weird because now we're in this world where I think Lane Norton popularized the if there's not a randomized control trial, I'm going to talk shit about you and call you a quack.
Yeah.
And now I used to feel like I was
I used the reason that I registered at bodybuilding.com so I could just block his ass on on MISC. He was everywhere, dude.
He was, yeah.
This guy.
I used to feel very like I was in the evidence-based community. And nowadays I'm just like, you guys are just so miserable and unhappy. Like everything is so fucking negative with them. I'm like, people feel better taking a cold shower. I don't care.
Go for it.
Exactly. It's like these people feel good. It's like, okay, I understand that there's a line that needs to be drawn. Like if you're telling people to do coffee enemas on a full moon to get rid of some mystical parasite that no one can prove that they have. Okay. All right. That's a little bit dangerous. You're going to hurt people. But, when there's people like Huberman, who I've never heard one thing that he says is dangerous. It's like, the dude says, get uncomfortable sometimes, do hard things, get some sunlight. And people are just, hating on him for being unscientific and this guy shouldn't have a PhD and blah, blah, blah. I'm like, dude, come on.
And it's a shame because his content is great, right? But he has to put so many disclaimers and explanations in there that it feels like half of it is just explaining stuff that, like I had an off-the-cuff conversation with Huberman over Instagram a while back, and he does a great job of what he does, but sometimes it's very vanilla because otherwise it gets backlash. And I'm like,
I know.
And that's maybe one of the reasons why I don't want to be that popular, because then I have to be super vanilla too. And then then my videos are even longer. They're already 20 minutes, 30 minutes, 40 minutes long of deep dives. And then I have to put another hour of vanilla disclaimers and explanation. Yeah, maybe in this situation, like that Adderall video that he made, man, it's like 1.5 hours of just beating around the bush. And I'm like, I know this shit. I know all of this, but the general population doesn't know it. And if you don't sugarcoat it for them and pre-chew the food for them, then they're just going to go ballistic, So that's, you want to be successful, but maybe not Huberman successful to the point you can't even say anything because otherwise people take it out of context. And, I think all those YouTube channels that copy his stuff where they say neuroscientist says this 5 minutes, right? All those just regurgitate his content like clips channels. I mean, they take everything that he does out of context because, like true Huberman, I think off the cuff, if you get him in a lecture, he's probably a genius.
Yeah.
But through the YouTube game, he had just tone it down so much that like guys like you and me, we have to really cherry pick the minutes where there's like gold mines, like, oh, this is a gold mine. That's great. I'm going to write that down, do more research. And then another 20 minutes of disclaimers. And then another 2-minute gold mine. I'm like, oh, fuck, I didn't know about this. I'm going to do some more research. And then 10 more minutes of disclaimers. So yeah, at one point we'll get, I realized it in myself, like in the beginning it was hardcore bodybuilding. Like no HCG, forget about it. Doesn't work because you're on train. Right? And now 5 years later, I'm like, you know what? Maybe you should put some HCG in there because not everybody's on trend like I used to be.
Exactly. Yeah. I change my mind all the time. And I think that's like, I think a true scholar, a true academic should really be willing to change their mind and be willing to be wrong. And a lot of the shit that I once thought was like woo woo, now I'm, more buying into. I'm like, yeah, maybe there is something to like this meditation thing and, stuff like that. Like it can go far, and being open to those things and micronutrients. Shit, I just bought some liver capsules the other day and I've been a huge, somebody who talks a lot of shit about all of the carnivore community, but I'm like, you know what, there's probably some nutrients that I'm missing because I'm not consuming organ meat. And I think they have some validity. It's like, I don't believe in everything that Paul Saladino says.
Not 7 tenets ancestral approved, right? Those were hardcore desiccated liver tablets from Animal Pack or something.
Exactly.
Like
they were some unfatted, they weren't his brand, but I don't even know what brand. But, it's like, I've been a huge, like I said, I've kind of really talked out against Paul Saladino, but I'm like, when I step back, like he's helping some people, and if somebody tells me that they feel better when they eat a certain way, like who am I to say no, just because I don't have a randomized control trial to prove it? Right. Like, do I think there's safer ways to do it? Like, an elimination diet first and slowly add foods back in. Sure. I don't think it needs to be an extreme, like just go to straight meat and be done. But to just be so close-minded, like a lot of our evidence-based colleagues are these days, I think is really hurting us, And when you look in the comment section, and I've never thought this before, but this is awesome. I think it's a true representation of the hurt that that populations are in right now. We're very unhappy. We're very unhealthy. And there's some people out there, the Paul Saladinos, where I don't agree with the short content at all. I think it's a little bit too, yes, the black and white. But when I listen to his long form, it's like, the dude just trying to help people. Huberman just trying to help people. And yeah, maybe they don't have those randomized control trials. There's not huge meta-analysis that prove everything that they're doing. But they're just trying to answer why the hell are we so unhappy and unhealthy these days? And, maybe it's microplastics. Maybe it's all this stuff that I never believed in the past, possibly. All I know is that people are very unhealthy. They're very unhappy. People are hurting. And, I think having a little bit of an open mind and doing something,
Yeah, some guidelines, to make a change. I think it's beneficial for all of us. And like, again, all these guys wouldn't be this big if they weren't doing something right. Because, the more people follow you, the more people get a benefit from such a protocol, right? Changing their life for the better. Eventually, it might not happen for everybody or work for everybody. But if there's a large amount of people that actually benefit from that kind of information, then they must be doing something right.
Yeah.
It's so I don't think it's necessarily bad at all. But if it doesn't work for you, it doesn't mean it won't work for somebody else or vice versa.
Right.
Yeah. That's why you can't follow just one black and white. It has to be carnivore. No. Wait a minute. It could just be keto, right? And maybe a little bit of vegetables and some fruit.
Right. Or maybe. Yes, exactly. It's like there's a lot of nuance, but I'm okay with that now. And, I'm okay with some people doing things outside of science because I think that science in a way is kind of failing us. And I think that we can see that. And we've seen that over the past few years, before all of these world events that happened, I was very much on the evidence base. I was one of those first ones lining up to go get a shot, and then after a while, I'm like, this shit seems a little bit sketchy, and all of everybody is a little unhappy right now. Things are really not all good. And this is where the modern science and modern medicine is leading us. And that's why, call me a quack. I don't care, a quack witch doctor or whatever, I'm into that like health optimization and the woo woo shit, because, I don't think.
Well, you have to think a little bit further than scientific evidence is able to provide. Plus, scientific evidence can be manipulated because there's always, a little bit of financial incentive there. Yeah. And scientific evidence is usually outdated because by the time it's published, the actual study is already a year old or 2 years old and things might have changed. Right. Since then, we used to believe that the earth was flat until we actually went over the edge. And then they realized, wait a minute, earth is round. So scientific evidence of today might not be hold up a year from now or 10 years from now.
And how many times have you and I seen where bodybuilders are decades before the science? Everybody says the bodybuilders are, bro science, and then bro science becomes mainstream science, so you get proved wrong enough times that you go, okay, I'm not just going to rely fully on what's published right now. Some of it has to be self-experimentation and, but anyways, I got some interesting. I got some interesting shit that I want to talk to you about if you want to head over to my podcast. Yeah,
for sure. So we'll wrap it up. Part 1 is here. We're going to do part 2 on the Atlas Hour. Where can people find you, Adam?
Yeah, you can find me on my Instagram, which is at Dr. AE Hotchkiss, HOTCHKSS. This YouTube would be awesome. It's Atlas Optimization. You just search Atlas Optimization. You'll see the Atlas Hour is the podcast right down
Links
there.
down
Yeah.
below. Yeah. Right.
And then we have my my company too is what is it? Atlas-optimization.com.
Mm-hmm.
Did I just freeze a little bit? Did I lag a little bit?
No, you're good. You're good. You're good.
Right,
You're good. Don't worry.
So yeah, they can find me in the link below. That's where you find me.
Exactly. Yeah. And otherwise, they can find you at Marek Health. You got your own discount code, Atlas.
I do. Yeah, I do.
Yeah,
I forgot about that. Yeah, I don't get any kickback for that.
Okay, then you just use my discount.
Yeah, just
code.
use Steve's. He's got babies coming. He needs to put these guys through college.
I need to put these guys. Yeah, this is private tutoring. Oh, expensive.
Exactly.
All right. Thanks so much for coming on the podcast. We'll see you in 2 seconds over on your podcast. Thank you guys so much for watching, guys. Steve out.